We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Aleph and Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 81a. On the previous summit, the Gemara was identifying 10 different kinds of cedar trees, and the last one that was identified was Almogim, and the Gemara identifies that as Kisisa, that refers to the coral trees. And the Gemara continues, Ika Diamri, there are those that say the last three kinds of cedar trees are Aronim, Armonim, and Almogim, and they are, Aronim are identified as Ori, those are identified as laurel trees, Armonim is Dulvi, Armonim are identified as plane trees, and Almogim are identified again as Kisisa, as coral trees. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hakona Shnei Ilanos Besoch Sada Chaveiro, if somebody buys two trees within the field of his friend, Hareza Lo Kana Karka, he has not acquired the land that is underneath those trees, he has only acquired the trees themselves. Rabbi Meir says, Kana Karka, he has acquired the land that is beneath those trees. And the Mishnah continues explaining the opinion of the Tanna Kama. According to the Tanna Kama, who the buyer has only acquired the trees and not the land, so Higdilu, so let's say the trees grow very large, the branches are extending all over the field, Lo Yeshapes, so the mocher, the seller, does not have a right, the owner of the property does not have a right to cut those branches, the buyer is entitled to the trees and all of the branches. V'ha'ola min ha'geza shalo, if anything grows from the trunk of the tree, that belongs to him, meaning it belongs to the buyer because he owns the tree. Umin ha'sharashim, however, if anything grows from the roots of the tree, which are underground, shall bal hakarka, that belongs to the owner of the land, because again, the owner of the land, the seller, owns the land, and he therefore gets anything that grows out of the ground, out of those roots. And finally, the Mishnah says, via mesu, if the trees die, ein lo karka, the buyer has no land, meaning the buyer has no right to replant those trees which have died. And the Mishnah continues, Kana Shlosha, let's say the buyer buys three trees, so in that case, Kana Karka, in that case, even the Tanna Kama agrees that the buyer acquires not only the trees, but the land beneath the trees. And Higdilu Yeshaf, in this case, if the trees grow very large, so the owner of the field actually is allowed to cut the trees, because he's giving the buyer a specific amount of land, the amount of land that generally goes along with this size tree, and if the tree grows larger than that, it extends beyond that, so the seller has the right to cut those branches that are going too far. In this case, when the buyer buys three trees, he gets the land as well, so whatever grows from the trunk and whatever grows from the roots belongs to him. It belongs to the buyer of the trees. And via Mason, if the trees die, yesh lo karka, he has land, he's able to replant. And the Rashbam explains, Hakona Shnei Ilanos, if somebody buys two trees, Stama, meaning he buys it without any stipulations, Lo Kana Karka Sevivav Klal, he doesn't get any land surrounding the trees at all. V'afilu Mokom Ha'ilan, even the place of the tree itself, he doesn't get. V'areu Kamisha Kanan Lepeirosav, it's as if he has bought the trees really only for the produce of the trees, that's all he owns the trees for. Shekesheyivesh Yakrenu V'yelech, if the tree dries up, so he has to uproot it and he goes, he's not allowed to replant another one. He doesn't own any land. Kana Karka, he does acquire the land. Because according to Rabbi Meir, it is considered to be like an orchard. He gets it even with two trees. And the Mishnah explained, according to the Tanna Kama, Higdilu, that if the tree gets very large, Hirchivu ha'anafim harbe, the branches extend out very much. Lo yeshafes, so the owner of the land, the seller, he can't cut those branches. Lo yiksos osan balakarka, the owner of the land can't cut them. Afal pishat sel ra lebeis hashalchin, even though the shade is bad for this kind of a field, this irrigated field. Dekevan de'ein lo karka lebal hilanos, and the reason for this is, since the owner of the trees doesn't have any land along with his trees, sharei shibed lo sadeyu letzorach hilanos kol tzorchan. So in that case, the seller really is giving him the rights to the field in terms of the fact that he gets any amount of field that the trees need, shal menas kain lakachan, because that was the condition that the buyer bought it. In a case where the buyer only bought the trees and no land, he does have that slight advantage that no matter how large the trees get, the seller does not have a right to cut the branches. Geza begamar mefarish. Geza again is that which grows from the trunk. The Gemara will explain that. Shalo, so that belongs shal bal ha'ilan. If it grows from the trunk, it belongs to the owner of the tree. Demigufi lanos kasi, that's coming from the tree itself. But if it grows from the roots, shal bal hakarka, then it belongs to the owner of the land. Tekevan mitachas lakarka yotze, since it's coming out from underneath of the land, mikarko gadol, it's growing from his land, so he gets to keep whatever grows in that fashion. And in mesu, let's say the trees die, yavsha, they dry up, ein lo karka. So again, in a case where he bought two trees and he only gets the trees, he doesn't have the land. Litza ilan acher b'makom, and he can't plant another tree in that place. But in a situation of 3 trees, kanakarka, he does acquire the land under the tree. The chashivi sada ha'ilan is considered like an orchard. The Gemara will explain exactly how all these trees are planted within the land. Now, if they grow outside the normal amount of space that these trees should grow, so then yeshafa mocher, the seller is allowed to cut those extra branches. Because in this case, since the trees are on the land of the lokeach, of the buyer, the seller isn't saying that you can use my property for these trees. You only get to use your property for the trees. If it extends into my property, he's not going to allow it to enter into his, because it's causing him damage, and that's why in this case the seller is allowed to cut those extra branches. And the Gemara says, Tanan Hasam, we learned in the Mishnah over there, this is a Mishnah in Meseches Bikurim, Hakona Shnei Ilonos Besoch Shel Chaver, if somebody buys 2 trees within his friend's property, Mevi Ve'ino Kore, so he brings the Bikurim, but he doesn't read from the Parsha that's normally read along with the Bikurim, and the idea is, since he doesn't own any of the land, he can't say this is the land that you gave me, because he's not bringing the Bikurim from his land, so he doesn't read from the Parsha. Rabbi Meir Omer, but Rabbi Meir says, Mevi Ve'kore, he brings the Bikurim and he reads from the Parsha, and presumably this follows what Rabbi Meir says in our Mishnah, that when a person buys 2 trees, he owns the land as well, and that's why he reads from the Parsha. And the Rashbam explains, Tanan Hasam in Meseches Bikurim, we learned over there Meseches Bikurim, Ve'eno Kore, again according to the Tanakama, he does not read from the Parsha, Lefisha lo kanakarka, because he didn't acquire any land, like we said, Velo karina be prihu adama asher nasatali, it's not the land which you gave me, Ulekame parach. Now the Gemara later will ask, Imkein lama mevi, if that's the case, why is he bringing the Bikurim at all? And again, Rabbi Meir said, Mevi v'kore, he brings the Bikurim and he reads from the Parsha of Rabbi Meir l'taime. Rabbi Meir is following his opinion like we see in our Mishnah, the Svir le kanakarka. Rabbi Meir holds when you buy 2 trees, you do acquire land, avol be'ilon echad moda, but according to this, let's say the person would buy only 1 tree, where he would only get the tree and not get any land, so Rabbi Meir would admit that in that case, you don't read from the Parsha. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Mechayiv hoyer Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir would be Mechayiv the person, Af belokeach peros min hashuk, even in a situation where he's buying the fruits from the marketplace. And the Rashbam explains, Mechayiv lahavi bikurim, a person would have to bring bikurim, belokeach peros shaba'ilan, when he buys the fruits of the tree, v'yosa shabikra tchila kosher bagemi, the one that blossomed first, that came first, so he'll tie a little reed around it, leida shemavakeresi, to know that that was the first one. V'hayde kotani hakona shnei ilanos. Now according to this, the reason why Rabbi Meir says you have to buy 2 trees, mishum rabbanon nakatlu, really he's saying that according to the shita of the rabbanon, meaning according to the rabbanon that you need to own land, Rabbi Meir is saying you don't need to buy 3 trees to own land, even 2 trees you own land. The ilu Rabbi Meir, whereas Rabbi Meir himself, afilu be'ilon echad, the point is he would say that you're going to bring the bikurim and read the parsha even if you have 1 tree, meaning she'ein lo karka, even if you have no land whatsoever, mevi v'korei. Rabbi Meir is saying you would bring the bikurim, the person would bring the bikurim and read from the parsha. That's what Shmuel is saying within Rabbi Meir. Af belokeach peros min hashuk, even for example if the person would only have 1 tree, even if he would have no land whatsoever, he brings the bikurim and he reads the parsha as well. And the Gemara continues, Mimayna, how do we know that? How do we know that Rabbi Meir goes that far? And the answer is, Midaktani Mishnah Yasera, because we really have an extra teaching over here. Because Michli, let us see, Tana le de yesh lo karka. It already says that Rabbi Meir holds 2 trees, you own the land as well when you buy 2 trees. So Pshita de Mevi v'kori, it's obvious, of course Rabbi Meir would say that he brings the Bikurim and he reads from the Parsha. Ella rather, Shmami, no, you see from this, the reason why it's being repeated over here is that Mechayiv hoyer Rabbi Meir af velokeach peiros min hashuk. Rabbi Meir would say that you have to bring the Bikurim and read from the Parsha, even if you're purchasing the fruits from the marketplace, meaning to say, even if you own no land at all. And the Rashbam explains, Mishnah Yasera hach to Bikurim. This Mishnah in Bikurim is extra. We would know it from our Mishnah. Ela Shmami no mechayiv hoyer Rabbi Meir, you see, the fact that you have this Mishnah in Bikurim, it's telling us Rabbi Meir would say chayiv even if you buy just the fruits. V'hachi kamer means to say, afilim kedivrechem keinhu, even if what you're saying is true. Tishnei ilanos ein lahen karka, even if I admitted to you that 2 trees, the person who buys 2 trees gets no land, afilu hachi, nevertheless, maybe v'kori, still the person would bring the Bikurim and read from the Parsha, to lo chashin and lakarka, because the point is, according to Rabbi Meir, we don't care about owning land, gabe mikra Bikurim, when it comes to the halacha of reading the Parsha when you bring Bikurim. But the Gemara continues, v'aksib, but isn't it written in the Pasuk, asher tavi me'artzach, it says you're going to bring it from your land, so that indicates that you do have to own some land. It seems not like what we're saying in Rabbi Meir now. And the Gemara answers, no, ahula me'utei chutz la'aretz. That Pasuk is coming to exclude fruits that come from chutz la'aretz. There's no no bikurim. But again, as long as it comes from within Eretz Yisrael, even if it's not your land, the person would bring the bikurim and read, as we said above in Rabbi Meir. And the Gemara continues, Vaksib, but isn't it written in the pasuk ad Masechet says it has to be your land? It sounds like again you have to own the land. And the Gemara says no, lemute ad masakum. It's coming to exclude. Let's say it comes from land that is owned by a non-Jew. So there we're saying in such a situation there's no bikurim. As the Rashbam says, lemute ad masakum shem yeshlo la'akum karka be'Eretz Yisrael. If a non-Jew has land in Eretz Yisrael, v'lokach mimenu peiros, and the person buys fruits from him, ein mevi mehen bikurim. You don't bring bikurim from them in that situation. And the Gemara continues, Vaksib, but isn't it written in the pasuk asher nasato li, that you gave to me? Again, it sounds like you are the owner of the land. And the Gemara says, not necessarily. Do you have to lizuzi? It means that you gave me money, v'zavni b'hu, and I was able to buy the fruits with that money. That's what the pasuk could mean. So again, it could be that Rabbi Meir says, even in a situation where you own no land whatsoever, you still bring the bikurim and you read from the parsha. But the Gemara continues, Mesiv Rabba. Rabba asks the following question: Hakona ilon echad b'soch shel chaver. It says if a person buys one tree in his friend's property, mevi ve'eno kori. In that case, he brings the bikurim, but he does not read from the parsha. Lefisha lo kana karka, because he did not acquire any land. He only owns the tree by one tree. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So it seems clear from this brisa that Rabbi Meir would say if you only own the tree and you don't own any land, then you don't read from the parsha. And the Gemara says to Yufta, the Gemara says indeed this is a refutation in Shmuel. Shmuel said according to Rabbi Meir that you would read from the parsha in this case, and clearly over here in this brisa it says that Rabbi Meir would hold you do not read the parsha bikurim in such a situation. And the Gemara continues, Amar lo Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim le Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim says to Rabbi Lazar, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Aleph Amid Beis.